Okay, so this lesson is on writing dialogue for your sequel to the Red Pyramid, which honestly is probably one of the hardest things for students to do. So dialogue should move the story forward. It should add to the action or provide character motivation or reveal information. Okay, so it shouldn't just be there for the sake of being there. It should add to our understanding of the story. So the words need to show the character's personality, emotions, thoughts, and reactions. You need to write dialogue as the characters or people actually speak. People often interrupt each other or don't finish thoughts. So if you are going to have an interruption, use a dash. Use a dash for the interruption. You use the ellipses if the character trails off or doesn't finish speaking on his or her own. Those are very different things. So make sure you're using the right punctuation depending on what's happening with the dialogue. You want to present dialogue so that it is easy to read. Therefore, we start a new paragraph every time someone new speaks. Okay, we need to identify the speaker with a tag unless it's clear who's speaking. And that's only the case if there are only two characters in the scene. Okay, if there are only two characters in the scene, you're going back and forth and starting a new paragraph every time. You don't necessarily have to use a tag, although often you may still use a tag now and then to add to that emotion, thoughts, reactions, etc. But definitely if there's more than three characters, you need to use a tag. The tag identifies the character who is speaking. It should also convey the character's emotions and actions, okay, while they're speaking. Punctuating dialogue. Okay, so this is different than citing from a text. When you write dialogue, okay, you're going to use the double quotation marks before and after a speaker's words. Okay, so you're going to use a comma then to separate the speaker's word from that explanatory phrase, which is what we call the tag or attribution, such as he said. Okay, an example, my favorite dessert is ice cream, Iris said. So Iris said is our attribution or tag, right? It's telling us who is saying the words. It is separated from the dialogue, which is in the quotation marks, with a comma. Okay, so the comma goes inside here. When that tag or explanatory phrase is before the dialogue, then the comma is outside the quotation marks attached to the explanatory phrase. Robert replied, comma, my favorite dessert is chocolate cake. And so those words are in quotation marks, double quotation marks on each end with the period on the inside. When the phrase is after the dialogue, the comma is inside that closing set of quotation marks. I don't eat dessert very much, comma, quotation mark, Frank added, with the period at the end then of your tag. Okay, so here the periods at the end of the dialogue, it goes inside the quotation marks. Here the periods at the end of the tag, and the comma goes inside the quotation marks. Okay, so in essence, your punctuation is always to the left, right? So we have the comma and the quotation marks here because it's in front, right? But it's to the left. And here's comma quotation marks. It's still to the left, but it is because the tag is after, okay? And there's no space. Okay, so you put a space. This is where citing a quote and writing dialogue is similar. So you have your comma, then you're going to have a space, then your quotation marks, and no space between that and the M. If you do it wrong, your quotation marks are going to face the wrong direction. The same here at the end, no space between the period and the quotation marks. If you put a space there, they're going to face the wrong direction. Okay, and then again, here at the beginning, no space between the quotation marks and the I. No space between the comma and the quotation marks, but there is a space then between, see if I can go back, between the quotation marks and the F in Frank, okay? So you're putting a space between your tag and your dialogue, but not between the quotation marks and the actual words being said. So you begin the speaker's words with a capital letter unless they continue a sentence already started. So for example, here we have our tag at the beginning. And so the W in whose is capitalized, right? Because it's the beginning of her sentence, Maddie's sentence. I think Bo said that Dad is. So here, I think is the beginning of a sentence. Then we have our tag in the middle with commas here inside our quotation marks and here at the end of our attribution before the quotation marks, that Dad is. So that Dad is would be a fragment. It is attached to the I think, and so we do not capitalize the T here. You replace the comma inside the quotation marks with a question mark or an exclamation point as appropriate. The tag is still punctuation as if it were a comma. Okay, so for example, who's that? The boy asked. So the question mark is replacing the comma, right, from the I think. But here, Bo is a name, so we capitalize Bo. Here, the is not a proper noun. The boy asked. We do not capitalize it. Even though you have a question mark here, the boy asked is kind of a fragment. It's attached to the dialogue. Its only purpose is to tell us who's saying those words. And so it's part of this whole sentence, which is why there's a period at the end. And so it is lowercase here. If it's a name, you uppercase it. But if it's not a name, if it's a the or a or anything like that, a general common noun, you do not capitalize it, even if there is a question mark or an exclamation point. So we want to improve our tags. We don't always want to just say the word said, right? And so there are 3 ways that we can improve our dialogue tags. And by improving our tags, we're staying true to what dialogue is supposed to do. Remember, dialogue is supposed to move the action forward. It's supposed to tell us character motivation, character emotion, character feelings, character's thoughts. And so by improving how we tag dialogue, we can do those things. Okay? So the first way that we looked at in the book is said is dead. Okay? So we're using a verb other than said. Okay? A synonym for said, but a synonym that's more specific. And there's a whole list. There's 140 verbs listed in Salmon Notes number 3 and 4 in your binders to help you with this. Okay? So an example, what I asked. So we used asked instead of said, and that tells us that it's part of the question, right? Let's finish arguing later, shall we? I told Carter. So told is a synonym for said, and it's a better word choice than said. Like my exploding birthday cake, I grumbled, trying not to let on how startled I was. So grumbled is even better. It's even better. Asked tells us it's a question. Told is okay, but grumbled is even better because now we're really adding character emotion, right? With just a word change. And so this moves the story forward by giving us character feelings by changing out this word. Notice again, we have the comma here and then the tag after. The second way to improve dialogue tags is by not using a verb that means a character speaking, but instead putting the dialogue in a paragraph that describes an action by the character or the appearance of the character. No, notice the period here. He knit his eyebrows as if trying to remember. This is not a synonym for said. This is a description of what the character's doing and how he looks, okay? But it tells us, right, how he's feeling. And so this is what a tag is supposed to do. It's supposed to move the story forward by giving us information about the character. I think there's a rebuilt temple down that hall, and he trails off, ... So again, we don't have to say he said, or he thought, or he mumbled, or anything like that. Instead, we use a description, what he's doing, what he looks like, to tell us what he's feeling. I sighed in exasperation. Poor boy, forced to travel the world, skip school, and spend time with Dad while I get a whole 2 days a year with him. So here, our tag, right, again, is not a synonym for the word said. Instead, it's an action that Sadie's doing. It tells us her feelings with it. And the words also convey her thoughts and feelings, right? So again, it tells us about Sadie, what she's saying. Carter looked at me bewildered. Did we just? So again, here's an action. Carter looked at me. That's what he's doing. Bewildered is how he looks, is his appearance. But none of this is a synonym for said. Okay, there's a complete sentence. It's what he's doing. It's just put in the same paragraph with what he's saying, so we know who's saying it. The last way to improve our dialogue tags and move our story forward is to use an adverb with the tag. And there's 2 pages in your buff colored notes, which is those Banished Boring Words synonym pages. It's 9 and 10. They give you a bunch of ly adverbs, okay? And you can use those to help you convey characters' feelings and emotions. So an example, the baboon, Sadie asked, suddenly interested. So suddenly here is an adverb conveying, right, the character's feelings when she asked this question. Where is he? The toady-looking one croaked nervously. So nervously here is telling us about croaked, which is a synonym for said, right? So one of those said is dead words. And both of these together, croaked gives us one sense of the emotion. Nervously tells us to what extent he's feeling that, like he croaked, right? And then, Sadie said nervously. Did you see that? So again, right, the nervously is telling us about sad and how she said it, because this is really just a interjection, right? And so how she said it is important, so nervously adds to that. And then of course we have the period and then the capitalized D and did for the second part of that dialogue, okay? So if you have any questions, if you're doing it right, how to improve your dialogue, if you're punctuating things right, please just ask, over the next 3 or 4 days. I'm happy to give you some feedback on it before you actually submit your sequel.